This past week will probably go down in history for the United States of America. Hello friends and welcome back. My name is Kat and this is Catapedia. I'm so happy to have you here. For those of you who live in more progressive countries who probably don't need to deal with this stuff anymore, or those of you who just don't live in America and don't get American news, let me give you a bit of an update. Last Friday, on June 24th of 2022, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe v. Wade. This means there is no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion. 13 of the country's 50 states have trigger laws. These are laws that were basically designed to ban abortion if Roe v. Wade was ever overturned.
For example, in Kentucky, Louisiana, and South Dakota, it happens immediately, meaning if you had an appointment this morning at 8 for this procedure, you could go through with it. From here on out, no, you cannot, according to what their law has planned there.
President Biden described last Friday as a sad day for the court and for the country, and that it was the first time that the court revoked a constitutional right. There are many immediate impacts that this will have on the health and life of women across the nation, but this did get me thinking about a longer-term effect on crime. It reminded me of an excerpt of a book and a film that I came across a while back that linked together abortion with society's crime rate. Will the overturning of Roe v. Wade affect the country's crime rates? Stanford University's economist John Donohue and University of Chicago economist Steve Levitt published a controversial paper in 2001 that argued the complete legalization of abortion in the United States between 1967 and 1973 resulted in a significant reduction in crime rates in the 1990s. Their reasoning was that legalized abortion resulted in less unwantedness. Unwantedness is something that causes a higher crime rate. Therefore, legalized abortion led to less crime. Let me first explain where this theory came from and why it's controversial and whether it will affect us in the future or not. The background and what was causing crime. Back in the 1960s, juvenile crime was on the rise, and finding ways to curb it became a focal point in election campaigns. Everyone thought it was going to get worse. But it didn't. It actually fell. And this was wildly unexpected. Between 1960 and 1990, there was an increase in crime rate for 30 years. So why did it suddenly drop between 1991 and 2001? And not just drop, but by 30%. Everyone started to come up with theories. Was it because of a stronger economy, the end of the crack epidemic, or better crime control? Along with all these people who were theorizing about it was Steve Levitt. He was obsessed with looking into crime and what caused this decline. He eventually wrote a paper, Understanding Why Crime Fell in the 1990s. 4 factors that explain the decline and 6 that do not. He looked into what he called the usual suspects: innovative policing, aging population, strengthened economy, gun control, right to carry laws, increased use of capital punishment, and he quickly realized that these either did not act as a deterrent or there just wasn't a strong enough correlation. For example, innovative policing was most often cited as one of the biggest reasons for the decline. When Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City between 1994 and 2001, the city implemented sweeping changes in law enforcement. The city also experienced the biggest decline in crime of any city in the country. The problem with this idea is that crime was already decreasing across the nation, and it was already decreasing by significant amounts before Giuliani took office. Levitt concluded that this was unlikely to be the biggest reason. The next most cited reason was a bigger reliance on prisons. More people were imprisoned, and therefore there was a reduction in crime. Levitt agreed and attributed about 30% of the decline to this. He allocated 15% to the demise of the crack epidemic, and about 10% to things like gun control, a bigger police force, and a stronger economy. After adding up all of these separate reasons, he realized that this only covered about half of the decline. The question now was, what were the remaining contributing factors that caused the decrease in crime rate? At the time, as he was scouring through the statistical abstract of the United States, which apparently is what economists do for fun, he found there was a huge peak in abortions in 1991. In fact, it went over 1.5 million. And just for frame of reference, during the same period of time, there were 4 million live births. So that's a lot of abortions. He wanted to see if there were any secondary factors that would be influenced by this. For example, crime rate. In an interview, he said he spent 3 weeks working around the clock to figure this out, but then he put away all his research because he thought it probably wasn't a very good idea. At the time, one of his collaborators on a separate project was John Donohue, who is a law professor at Stanford University and also holds a PhD in economics. His interests lay in criminal justice issues, and whereby at the time Steve Levitt was looking into the reason for the decline in crime rate, Donohue had been looking into the reason for the increase in crime rates during the 1960s. Eventually, during a meeting in Levitt's office, both of the researchers realized that they had come to the same idea about a possible connection between abortion and a decline in crime rates. However, Levitt's theory at the time focused on how abortions caused a lower amount of childbirths. Donahue, on the other hand, was thinking about unwantedness. What is unwantedness? It's a word used in social sciences literature. It describes how children who are born to either parents who don't want them or aren't ready for them are more likely to have worse outcomes. This includes health and education and work. Also, these kids are more likely to engage in criminal behaviors. The Freakonomics film from 2010 uses the example of Romania in the 1960s and 1970s, when it was under the dictatorship of Nicolae Ceausescu. In an attempt to increase the workforce to help the struggling economy, Ceausescu outlawed abortion in 1966. There were menstrual police officers taxing the infertile and giving pregnancy tests to people. Women lost the freedom of choice of when to have children, and they were forced to have more. Although the birth rates did double, it resulted in a lot of unwanted births, and this resulted in troubled upbringing. According to the film, even after age, health, income, and education of the mothers were controlled for, the children that were forcibly born that year underperformed in education and in work compared to those children who were born in the year before. Back then, Levitt and Donahue made a prediction that crime would continue to fall 20% over the next 2 decades. In a 2019 interview with the journalist's resource, John Donahue said, "The thing that's most interesting about the research is we simply repeated the regression process we went through 20 years ago with more data, and the results got even stronger. That was a pretty interesting and powerful affirmation of the original hypothesis which was initially proposed." So why was this research so controversial? Well, firstly, they made a mistake in the initial paper. They were kicking themselves about it afterwards. But even after they did the correction, they said that it actually didn't affect the correlation between abortion and crime rates, which they found initially. Another reason why this was controversial is because the economists disagreed on what drives the analysis of a variable. What makes you think, hey, this needs an extra look at? For example, Theodore Joyce, an economics professor at Baruch College, explained that modern econometrics is focused on looking at really sharp changes in the variable driving your analysis. What is meant by this is that if there are multiple variables that drive a smooth change, for example employment, crime, abortions, demographics, from the 80s through the 2000s, then you can't just take 2 out of them and say, hey, there's a relation between them, because there are many variables that were changing together at the time. Other economists thought that comparing state to state, which they did do in their previous research, was not appropriate, because each state has so many different variables, and controlling for variables such as poverty and alcohol-related crime is really difficult. In their new research paper, Donahue and Levitt included within-state comparisons. Other research also found links between abortion and crime rates, but their reason was that there were fewer women becoming teen mums. At the end of the day, Donahue and Levitt revisited their research in 2019, and they confirmed that they were still confident in their findings. They said it's rare for economic theory to make predictions for 20 years into the future that are both bold and precise. Looking back at their first paper, they said they lost the media war. Because of the error that they made in that paper, tabloids had a bit too much fun coming up with the headlines, and it really damaged their reputation as researchers. They also mentioned that their research wasn't made with the intention of telling people how to feel about abortion. In fact, they point towards 2 policy areas that should get more attention as a result. Firstly, crime. The country spends a lot on police and prisons, but if they aren't really acting as a deterrent for crime, then should so much be spent on them? And the second area is to do with the unwantedness. If unwantedness really does lead to so much crime, maybe it is an area that needs to be looked into. How do you build a society in which more children feel that they are loved and wanted and cared for? And now, how does this affect our future? In a 2019 interview, Levitt and Donahue made another prediction. They said that should abortion become illegal, they think that there will be an increase in crimes, because there will be an increase in unwanted births. It definitely feels like things are going a bit in reverse, backwards, because it's a bit strange how something that felt like it was all done and dealt with in the 1970s suddenly became a key focal point in the election campaigns in the 2020s. And this was because several states were pushing back on the right to an abortion and implementing new restrictions. What are your thoughts on the correlation between abortion and crime? Do you think this is going to affect our future and increase crime? I'll put the sources that I used in the description below and feel free to peruse them. This whole thing has been taking over the news cycle in the US, and it's definitely a tough time mentally and physically for women who are pregnant and maybe don't want to give birth. Anywho, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day and week, and I will talk to you next time. Bye bye.